What's up, painters, and welcome back to Bellamars Miniatures. Today we're back to Frosthaven to finish the last hero that makes up my group's starting party. That's the Deathwalker. Let's get painting. As always, I'll be blocking in the majority of the colours first before moving on to the shading and highlighting. And the first colour is Dark Sky for the undercloth. The majority of this is towards the bottom of the model, but you should also make sure that you pick out the sleeves. The boots, pants and wrist guards I blocked in with uniform grey. Thinking back on it, if I was doing this model again, I might have done the pants a different colour, and I also think I would have done the boots and wrist guards a darker grey, but I don't think it matters too much, I fix it later. Next, I did the cloak with lava orange. I'm not sticking to the box art for this character at all. I'm honestly not a fan of the cover art for Deathwalker. It looks very one note and bland in my opinion. I probably didn't have to go completely the opposite direction with such bright colours, but it's what I settled on. And at the end of the day, they're our models and we can paint them whatever scheme we like. For the skin, I decided to go a dark purple skin. I think the combination of a dark blue, a medium dark purple, and a bright orange will look really good and just make it pop. For the wooden part of the staff, I used oak brown. I'll be leaving the head of the staff till later because that's the main part I'm going to be handling the model by, and even though I use gloves, I'll probably still end up rubbing some paint off. There isn't a lot of leather on this model, just the satchel and the strap for it, but be sure to pick out the strap along the front and back, it's pretty easy to overlook. For this I used leather brown. You could also do the gourd that she's holding leather brown here. I did it a different colour later, but I don't think that's necessary. I'm not entirely sure what it is that's in her satchel. They look like orbs or something. Maybe they're similar to the orbs that like Green Goblin throws at people, but whatever. Either way, I did the orbs and the bottles with Poisonous Cloud. The gourd she's holding I did with Desert Yellow. As I said before, you could probably get away with doing this with the leather brown or even maybe the oak brown, but I just didn't think that either of those really suited it, so I went with Desert Yellow. And that's all the blocking in I'm doing for now, so it's time for the shading. To start with, I hit the orange and purple with red tone. There are a lot of recesses on the orange, so I make sure just to push the wash around and ensure it gets into all of those recesses just to get that nice shading. Then the blue and purple got hit with blue tone. The purple wasn't as dark as I wanted it yet, so I figured hitting it with an extra wash here was a good idea. Then all the grey got hit with dark tone. I went very heavy with the dark tone because once everything was blocked in, and like I mentioned earlier, I felt the uniform grey was a bit too light. Then I used strong tone on the gourd and the leather, but honestly I could have done this with a red wash and I think it would have been fine and it would have skipped a step here. Now it's time for highlights. I start with the blue and use ultramarine blue to pick out the raised edges. It's worth noting that a lot of the blue towards the bottom of the model will be in shadows, so you don't want to do too much highlighting there, just enough to brighten the parts that are sticking out and facing upwards. The orange cloak is the main part of the model, so this is where I decided to put some extra effort in and just help the model pop more. So the first layer is lava orange to bring back that mid-tone and start building the highlights. Next, it's a 50-50 mix of demonic yellow and lava orange. Here I'm looking to pick out the ends of the straps and any that are like crossing over the top of others. Also the shoulder pads and the thing around her neck. Why am I drawing a blank on what to call that? Well, let's pretend I'm capable of thinking of basic words and move on. The final highlight for the orange is demonic yellow. I'm picking out the same spots as the previous step, just in smaller areas, making sure to leave some of the previous layer showing to help with the gradient of the highlights there. Now it's time for the skin. Since I darkened it so much with the two shades, I want to bring back that mid-tone with Alien Purple first. So I make sure to leave the recesses darker and keep those shadows there, while bringing back the mid-tone on the higher and raised parts. Then with oozing purple, I start to pick out the highlights. So on the face, I pick out the nose and cheekbones. On the hands, I pick out the knuckles, the fingers, and the parts of the hand that are facing upwards. I did do a couple of layers of this, just working in smaller areas each layer, just to brighten those highlights up to where I wanted them. Next, it's time to work on the orb on the top of the staff. I start with crystal blue and block that in. I'm not too worried about going over the wood parts that are holding the orb, as I intentionally left them unpainted when I did the wood earlier. This is where I came in and fixed the wood parts holding the orb. I would 100% recommend waiting to do this till you finish the orb. I have no idea what was going through my head when I did this step now, but it's pretty clearly the wrong order to do it in. So you should learn from my mistakes and not do it till after you finish the orb. Next, I come in with electric blue. I'm filling in the middle while leaving the crystal blue showing like along the edges of the wood parts. Then I go back to the crystal blue and I'm putting it in the middle of what I just did with the electric blue. So now the crystal blue should be showing along the edges of the wood and in the middle of the sections. Then finally with deep blue, I'm just doing a line down the middle of the previous step. So when this is finished, each section should be crystal blue along the edges, then electric blue, crystal blue, and deep blue all working towards the middle. I think it gives the impression that the orb has some sort of magical power, which is obviously what I'm looking for. Then the horns on her shoulders and her head get hit with a layer of skeleton bone and just a quick small highlight of white. And then it's time for the final part of the character itself, and that's the hair. I block it all in with snake scale just for a nice green colour. Then I do a light wash of green tone. I'm being careful to just push this to the spots I want it while trying to avoid darkening the raised parts too much, because I'm not planning on doing any more highlights on the hair. Then I hit the eyes with Poisonous Cloud. With such a dark skin tone, I think a really bright green will just stand out nicely here. And she's a weird alien demonic chick, so she won't have normal eyes. Finally, it's time for the base. I start with oak brown for the mud to give a really dark mud look. Then I do leather brown for the stump. With the mud being so dark, I wanted a lighter stump to give a bit of contrast alongside the rocks on the base. Speaking of the rocks, they get hit with ash grey. Then I hit the whole base with a wash of strong tone. And of course, for the final step, I painted the rim of the base black. And we're finished. Overall, I'm happy with how the character has come out, but there are definitely a few spots I'd change if I did it again. Starting with a darker grey for the boots and that stuff is a pretty big one. Having to darken it with a shade has left those areas really shiny. Thankfully, I'll be varnishing this with matte varnish when I eventually get around to it, so that won't be a problem in the long term. Also, the order I did the orb in, the wood parts should definitely have been left to last. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has given you some ideas for your own Frosthaven characters. If you're interested in seeing the rest of the Frosthaven characters painted, why don't you hit that subscribe button, as I'll be doing them all over the next few months. And if you've watched this far and enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like. Catch you in the next video.